Auburn is not a place. It is a people. The loveliest village on the plains is more than just a collegiate sports venue, more than a university filled with historic buildings, and more than a quaint little southern town. Its worth lies within its people, those that call Auburn home, whether that be for a single day at a time or a lifetime. Much like our legendary Toomer's oak trees, our stories are the product of a firm foundation laid at the beginning of our Auburn story. These are the stories of the Auburn family. These are their roots. Welcome to episode 7 as we continue our journey of sharing and exploring the stories of your Auburn family members. On this episode, I will be speaking to Casey Teel. Now, Casey, just like everyone else's Auburn Roots, has very special stories, but he has a part of his Auburn story that is very pertinent to the time that we're living in right now, as we have currently just lost Coach Pat Dye. Now, I want to be clear that this is about Casey Teel and his stories, but Coach Dye is such a huge part of that, and I think you'll understand why when he explains how he came to be a part of the Auburn family, the way he came to have a relationship with Coach Dye, and how his influence on his life was obviously revolved around sports, but something much bigger in life, in his career. And in the end, he ended up being coached in a different way by Pat Dye. So let me introduce my guest, Mr. Casey Teel. Casey, welcome.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here and being willing to tell your Auburn roots, your Auburn story. And, it's one thing to meet somebody in person, but in this world of virtual stuff here, it's always kind of interesting for the first time to meet somebody via this. So I appreciate you being brave enough to do that.
Yeah, it's not a problem at all.
Well, here's the way I like to set up my podcast episodes for this series is we want to get to know you and get to know where your Auburn roots start. But the question I always start with is this: why Auburn?
Probably in 2008, I was at a community college, and I just got to thinking, what did I want to do? And I'd always landscaped. And so I got to looking, and by far Auburn's got one of the best horticulture schools. And I just decided to take that route. Mm-hmm. And it was just one of those things that was meant to be. This probably doesn't happen for most people. But the week that I decided that I was going to Auburn, told my parents, applied for some grants and scholarships, sent my application in, and within a month I had got accepted, found a place to live, and had moved. So very fast-paced. But Auburn is, especially the horticulture part of Auburn, the professors there are just so welcoming. Yeah. And that's what I fell in love with, not just the town, but the school. Mm-hmm. And they just took me right in. And just it took me 2.5 years. I didn't waste too much time at Auburn. I probably look back and regret not staying a little longer. But then again, your goal is to get in and get out. But and that's what I did. But like I said, the professors there helped you do that. Yeah. They guided you in the right way. And they just, like I said, from the week one they just took me right in.
Well, so here's some interesting things I think you pointed out there that I'd like for us to park on for a second. First off, you are a superstar because you got out of there very quickly at Auburn. I think we all set out with the goal maybe of getting out in 4 years. I took the long route of 6 years in college overall, but 4 at Auburn. I always said that was because I started 2 years at a different college and I wanted to get my full 4 years at Auburn. So I commend you for getting in and out very quickly and not wasting any time. The other thing is I actually took some botany classes. Did you take systematic botany at Auburn?
I did not. I didn't have that. Wasn't one I had to take. I went to LBW in Andalusia.
Okay.
There 2 years, and then when I went to Auburn, I did a summer semester in England. I did study abroad.
Wow.
And a little bit of botany there, but it wasn't a class that we had to take. That was just part of the curriculum that they. Yeah. But yeah, I did that also.
So not only did you get out of school in record time, you have overseas experience as well. To me, here, just a little bit. I mean, I'm terrified of planes. So again, you've already impressed me by the fact that you beat me out of school time-wise, and that you can get on a plane, not just across the country or something like that, but you're going over that big blue ocean over there to learn about your passion, which is obviously horticulture. And tell me a little bit about that. Like what did you learn over there?
Like I said, Auburn took me right in quickly. The professors, because I had never flown anywhere. And prior to that, the first month I was in school, one of the professors said, "Hey, you need to join this club called Planet." And so I joined it, and within a month, they flew me to California for, we did, it was just each school that had horticulture, Auburn, and there was one, Georgia. They come all over, and they meet different states every year. Well, that year it was California. And I actually went up a week early with the professor and a few grad students, and we went to the Sequoia National Forest and stayed 4 nights there before the competition. So they just, like I said, threw me right in.
Yeah.
Flew to California. It never been anywhere close to California, and got to experience all that. Then had the competition, come back, and then another professor said, "Hey, you should do study abroad." I said, "Okay." Well, and so went overseas, stayed there. It was 3 months for the summer semester, and while I was there, we flew to Ireland, went to Scotland, Paris, and so every weekend we were going somewhere. So I dove right in.
You are highly cultured compared to me, sir. I have never left. Well, I have left the continental United States for a brief moment on a whale watching cruise in Seattle, but that was like literally for seconds when you crossed over the Canadian border. So, I guess I've been to the Bahamas. Anyway, it doesn't matter. This is not my story here. I'm tangenting here. That's really cool, and I think one of the things that Auburn is known for is not just obviously educating you in your field, but throwing you into the field. And I can speak to that too in the field that I was in at Auburn. But I think I get a sense out of that you value the education that you got at Auburn, but you also value the experience that you got at Auburn. Is that a fair statement?
The experience is what has definitely gave me vision and direction through life. So I can't complain at all about my experience. That's one thing I still reminisce on. More so, education is great. I had to have it, enjoyed it, but the experience and the traveling and what I got to see does just as much for you.
That's a great way of looking at it there. They're both equal value here, but especially in something that you really are hands-on, experience is very key. And I think that's great that the professors there invested so much time in you, and other faculty and peers helped you dive into the world that you wanted to be in now. But I do want to circle back just a little bit. We jumped right into how you came to Auburn. Were you an Auburn fan before you went to school at Auburn?
I can't lie. I've always been the
other side,
root of evil. Yeah.
And are you still that way, or are you more on the fence?
I guess you can say I love football, and I cannot root against Auburn, and it's hard for me to root against the other side too.
Right.
But it's just like I said, Auburn. But I tell people this: I've got two daughters and one son. Mm-hmm. I will send them to Auburn way before I will anywhere else.
All right. I like that vote of confidence there. See, I can get on board with that thinking. I appreciate that you appreciate football as a whole, especially here in the state of Alabama, because as much as we don't like the other side, it's hard to ignore the success they've had historically and currently. So we appreciate the success. We just wish it wasn't at the expense of Auburn. So there's no shame in that. I'm glad to hear that you are valuing the educational system of Auburn much more than Alabama. That puts a little feather in your cap right there.
Yeah, from what I can tell, Auburn is just the town. I still have people there I call family.
Yeah.
Auburn is by far more of a family-oriented place.
Mm-hmm.
Had people, at the time it was my fiance, she's my wife now. People would just take us in and cook every Thursday, cook us a meal, and we cook. And I just don't think you get that at other places.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of looking at it too, because that's what I tell people about Auburn is, you use this nebulous idea of Auburn family, a family atmosphere, and people are like, yeah, right, that's not true, but it really is. And I try to share with people that maybe has some stigmas about the South, like you need to come to Auburn. It's representative of what is best about the South. Now, it's not the same there's differences and things like that across the board in Auburn as well, but by and large the community, the university, the students, and the families that are now all tied to it have these strong values of family, of sharing with each other, welcoming them into their homes, to their tailgates and things of that nature. So even if you started with some background on the other side, I'm glad to hear that we have infected you to the point where you cannot deny the education and your at least desire to root for Auburn in football, on either side there.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
So would you say that Auburn football is your favorite sport at Auburn, or would it be something else?
No, Auburn football would definitely be my favorite sport. I'm football in high school, and I've just always enjoyed watching it.
So what's your first Auburn football memory that you connected with and appreciated it? You and I think are about similar ages, so I think you and I probably would have some similar ideas, but what's your first, like, oh wow, I really appreciated that about Auburn football? What's that like?
Well, believe it or not, when I was probably in 5th grade, a good friend of mine, huge Auburn fan, and his dad's a big alumni. They're from Andalusia. His dad's Bill Albertson. He had a TV show on TLC, and while I was at Auburn, William Albertson, he's my age, he was there in agriculture. So, but when I was in 5th grade, he took me to my first college football game ever, and it was at Auburn. And so I always remembered that, and how just the uproar and the Eagles soaring. And when I come to Auburn, the first football game, home game, I was there in the stands in the student section. So
yeah, that student section is something else. And here's the thing that I've found now, having graduated and now moved on to a part of my life where I really can't pass as a student anymore and get into the student section. Yeah. It's a different experience out there in the stands when you're not standing up cheering the entire time. It's still fun. I still love being in that stadium with our Auburn family members, but gosh, it was tiring, but it was so much more fun being in the student section. So I'm glad that you had that experience. Is there like a favorite game from your past that you remember distinctly?
It's hard to say.
Too many of them. Yeah,
there's too many of them, especially there. I stayed and watched all the games, but no, I don't have one particular one, because I hate to say this too. I've never been to an Iron Bowl game.
Wow.
I'm a big time cook. I love to cook, and so I always, for the Iron Bowl, love to cook and have friends over and watch the game, and instead of fighting that crowd. And so I've got to go one day. And if I do go, it's going to be to the Auburn Stadium. But yeah, that I'm sure a game like that would have been one of my top games. But yeah,
we've got to make this happen for you, because it is the mecca of college football. I'm sorry, my Michigan and Ohio State friends, yes, that's cool. Y'all got your little rivalry over there in the the Midwest. That's cool. That's fine. Notre Dame, USC, sure, why not? That's a great rivalry. It's nothing compared to the pageantry of a post-Thanksgiving football game of Auburn versus Alabama. Now, I've never been to Tuscaloosa and been to an Iron Bowl, or I wasn't, really old enough to go to Birmingham and go to Legion Field for an Iron Bowl, but I have been to several in Jordan-Hare Stadium, and each time, even if you lose, it is just something incredible. So we've got to get you there and get you in the stands, because I think it will just, especially for someone who can appreciate both sides of the rivalry, I think that would it explode your little heart.
And it's one of those things, a lot of people don't understand it, But even this year, hoping Alabama goes all the way. When they lost to Auburn, it doesn't hurt my feelings because I can't pull against Auburn, and I'm not going to. So,
I love it.
People don't understand it if they've always been for Auburn.
Yeah.
But when you've been an Alabama fan your whole life and then go to Auburn, that's the only way you can explain it.
Right. Well, and see, that's the cool thing about this is that you're more well-adjusted than most of us. And I speak for myself here. I am still on the bandwagon of if my kids one day ever ask me or suggest that they're going to Alabama, I said, you can go, but I ain't helping you. You can go. And I'll be there for the Auburn games versus Alabama, and I will be stark orange and stark blue and nowhere in between. But so, yes, you are well more adjusted than a lot of us here tonight. So I'm glad to hear that, which I think is great to talk about this aspect of it. And again, this is about your story, but I think this is a huge part of your story and very significant for the time that we're doing right now. I never like to do this, but to date the podcast a little bit for those listening and those that may be listening far off in the future. We are recording this right after the passing of Pat Dye. And you have a special connection with him and your passion, your career now that I think is interesting to talk about and share with. But I also want to put this connection here too. Pat Dye was fully Auburn, but he had ties that were very strong and very interesting to Alabama. He coached under Bear Bryant. He had a special connection over there with them. But he was fully Auburn, but he could appreciate and understand the Alabama people as well. So I think that's interesting that you two kind of share that perspective there. Did he have any influence on you seeing it that way?
He knew at the time that I had always been an Alabama fan, and he'd always kid around and just tell me I didn't know any better. But yeah, he definitely had ties with Alabama, but he was Auburn to the depths. I mean, he loved Auburn, and that showed. He wanted Alabama to lose every game. So, yeah, he had some ties, but it didn't persuade his decision at all.
Yeah, you can still have your loyalties, but you can also still have those fond feelings and things towards the other side as well, and that's perfectly fine to do that. But tell me a little bit about how you got to know Pat Dye and how that ties into your whole life, your career, and everything there.
Well, he had started. He had a love for Japanese maples, and so he had developed a really large-sized garden out on his property, and he had purchased, I guess, in the beginning around 3,000 trees that he was going to start a nursery. Well, one of our professors lined up a trip up to his farm, and he was walking us through the garden and through trees, and he was calling them out by name, and he would ask questions. And that tree's always been a passion of mine. And when he'd ask a question, I guess I was the only student that knew the answer to it. So I'd chime in and say, and I might not have been the only one. I might have been the only one that I guess wasn't intimidated to ask, because I just looked at him as a person.
Yeah.
And it was the next day. I didn't think anything about it. The next day, he called my professor, and I say he got a background check on me, and they told him how I was as a student, and he called me that afternoon and asked me if I'd ride out to his farm, and I did. So I ride out there, and once I get out there, he asked me to hop in the truck. So I hop in the truck with him, and he rides around the garden, and then we go into town, Notasoga, and he's got to go to the post office. He stops and gets the mail, and still talking to me, and he just told me what his plans were and asked me if I wanted to be a part of it. And I said, yeah, I'd love to. And that's what started that. And in a way, he took me in and treated me, I would say, probably like one of the football players when he was coaching. He would teach me what his knowledge of the plant and ask my opinion, especially on the garden that he has now it was in the middle of being designed, and he had a vision for it. But before he would do anything, he'd ask me, hey, this is what I'm planning on doing. He said, what do you think? Or he'd say, do you think this should go there? And I would tell him what I thought, and we would do it together. We designed it together, and we installed the plants, and there's some big rocks that's all in the garden, and me and him would put them down. And we laid the sod that's in that garden together. And so that's kind of how that started. We'd get help, and then all my buddies, it was not hard to find help whenever I told them what we were doing and where we were at. So he would say, hey, I need 3 or 4 guys. I'd call my buddies up, and they'd come out and help us lay sod or plant trees. And there's a picture that I posted online last week after his passing. It's probably one of my favorite pictures. It's just one of his friends took it, and it was with us not knowing he was taking the picture, but you could just tell he was lecturing me. And I was sitting there, and you could tell I was really into what he was saying. And that by far is probably one of my best memories, because it was probably 17 degrees in that picture. And we were potting up. I had 6 buddies there, and we were potting up new saplings, Japanese maple saplings, to graft in the springtime. And it was one of the coldest. It was raining, but they had to get done because he went big a lot of times.
No kidding.
And these trees had to be planted. So we were on timeline crunches, and we had to get it done. And I think that's why I made it out there as long as I did, because I've just pushed myself, just like he expected out of football players. He gave me a timeline. I made sure we always hit it.
Yeah. I think that's really cool. First of all, the first part of your story there, that you just looked at him as a person. I can stand here and say that had I ever had the chance to meet Pat Dye, I would have been one of those friends of yours that would have just been mouth agape and not wanting to say anything, just wanted to take it all in. And so the fact that you already had this background where you were kind of on the even fence of things in terms of the sports rivalry of it, it already kind of puts you in a position to not be afraid and not be in so much of an awe. Like you obviously respected him, but you were not afraid to reach out. And I think that's what's so cool about your Auburn story is, but yes, you don't have the traditional, I was born and bred this way. You actually have ties to the other side. But because you slowly were integrated into the Auburn family and learned that connection there, got your school in there, it brings you to Pat Dye. And you get to now be coached, in a sense, by him. And I love that you expressed that as it was similar to, you think, how he did his players. Because when you hear his players of the past talk about how awesome he was, what a great father figure, what a great mentor, and also just someone that would listen to them. I get that out of your story with Pat Dye, and I think that's really awesome there. And I think it's funny you bring up the Japanese maple things, because there's 3 things that Auburn people associate with Pat Dye. It is Auburn football, Japanese maples, and beagles. Those are what he's known for out there. Tell me, help us understand what's so cool about the Japanese maple that you and Pat Dye love so much about it.
Well, the tree is a very slow growing tree, and it's been a little while since I've done my research on them, but at the time when I was out there was over 3,000 different varieties. So you have to graft one to get the certain variety you want. So if you take seeds and grow them, you're just getting a seedling. It's not going to be the tree that you took off the seeds off the plant from. So if you want a weeping Japanese maple, you have to graft from a weeping one onto the seedlings. And so that's that. And for Coach, he would always say when he built that house, the landscaper put one by his house, and that was the very first one that he'd ever really paid attention to. And he started watching the colors change. So in the springtime when they leaf out, they can be a bright red or a bright green color, and they'll change throughout the season, but it's the fall. The fall color is what really catches people's attention. And that's what he loved so much about them. He loved watching them leaf out, and he loved watching the leaves fall off of them in the wintertime.
Hey Auburn fans, I want to take a quick timeout from this episode to bring your attention to something very special. Here at the E2C Network, we pride ourselves on bringing you the best content for Auburn fans out there. And best of all, it's free to you. But just because it's free doesn't mean there aren't costs, especially when you have a library of hundreds of podcasts, videos, blogs, and more. Many of you have reached out and asked how you can support this network in the past. Well, now I have your answer. It's called the E2C Network Booster Club over at patreon.com/E2C Network. There you'll find a membership monthly reward system where you can sign up for as little as $1 and get different perks at different tiers. Some of those perks include things such as apparel, eligibility to join us on future podcasts, recognition as an E2C Network booster, exclusive communications, and bonus content that is available nowhere else. If you love this network and want to help us keep producing podcasts like this one, please head on over to patreon.com/E2C Network to join the E2C Network Booster Club. You can also get there by going to our website, e2cnetwork.com/support. Whether you decide to join or not, we are still so appreciative that you would support us by just listening and being here, because each and every one of you is part of our E2C Network family. Well, that's it. Timeout's over. Let's get back into the episode.
He strikes me as a very complicated man, but a very simple man.
Yeah, he could be complicated, but just as down to earth, simple. You said beagles. He had at least 6 dogs that ran around and lived inside the house at night. And one of them, the king of all of them, was like a little rat terrier.
Yeah.
So
That's funny. I'm now picturing that little rat terrier nipping around his little heels and just kind of being the boss of everything out there. It just adds to the in a way, it's the caricature of what we have of Pat Dye and why he has such fond memories there, because again, so complex but so simple that he enjoys something that most of us don't really pay attention to, a Japanese maple, but he's found the beauty of it, and so have you as well, through obviously your own interests but his teachings as well, and gotten to experience that with him was pretty cool. So I would imagine spending a lot of time out there on his property, you probably got to meet some interesting characters from Auburn past. Is that true? I mean, have you ever gotten to meet like players or anything like that?
No, I never got to meet players, but like Bo Jackson would come out there. But like I said, the same with Coach. I probably could have poked my head in to meet him, but he had me busy working. I just didn't ever. I would have liked to have met some people. I think the only person that I probably met was, and you may have to correct me on the name, coach from Tennessee.
Johnny Majors?
Majors.
Okay.
Come out to do some quail hunting. Okay. And I talked with him for a little while, but I had a buddy. We had to take him to the airport, and I couldn't leave. And so I had a good friend that was a huge Auburn person. But the fact that we had to take him to the airport, I just called him. I said, hey, you want to do this for me? He said, yes, definitely. So he's a hardcore Auburn fan. His name's Blake Cotter, and he's just anytime I need something, I call him. And Coach, he had a barn that all the hunters would stay in or guest.
Yeah.
And the upstairs was where he had all his trophies and pictures. And just taking now, and like I say, Blake was by far just one of the biggest Auburn fans that I know still today. And taking him up to that room, you would have thought I had introduced him to the whole football team. And so, but and I didn't meet. It was Gene Chizik.
Yep.
I'd be taking Coach from place to place, book signings, and he'd be on the phone talking to him. And that, to me, is just, even though I didn't hear the whole conversation, but that's neat to me because I heard what Coach had to say to him. You know, that kind of talk I got to witness.
Yeah. I think that's just as special because even though you maybe didn't get to shake hands with some of these great names and things like that, you're hearing not just what he's teaching you when he's talking to you, but you're hearing the advice or just sharing that he's doing with some of these other great figures that we have out there. Again, something that we as Auburn fans really appreciate, but it's different when you're actually here, they're sitting there learning, even though he's not necessarily teaching you, but in a way he still was, whether that be, I don't know what those conversations were with Gene Chiswick, but I'm sure they were some of those difficult times as well before he left there. And I'm sure that Coach Dye, having experienced some of those tough times at the end of his tenure at Auburn, had some very good advice for him. And, I don't think it's a shock that Gene Chiswick to this day still resides in Auburn and is connected to the university, even though he had such a tumultuous ending. And I wonder almost, is that because of Pat Dye? Did Pat Dye, share with him that, yeah, this is a tough time, but I think you've grown to appreciate what's so special about obviously the university, but the people of Auburn, the family of Auburn, the community of Auburn. And I think that's really cool that you have been able to learn from him, but also learn through him and how he was teaching others in that. Is there anything that other cool stories or things that maybe most of us that have never met Pat Dye or spent a lot of time with him that you want to share about him?
There were some moments for me that, like I said, I'll always remember. I think the one that touched me the most, the story, was when I read the other day from Jimmy Raines about the funeral. And Coach, see if I can paint this picture. When you drive into his property, it's down a dirt road. Well, after a half a mile down the dirt road, there's another dirt road to the right that takes you up to the nursery and the garden. But then you keep taking that dirt road, and if you stay straight, it takes you to his house. So if you start at the top of the garden and walk to the bottom of the garden, you're close to his house.
Okay.
His house was built. They literally poured dirt and made a mound into, like, his house was on a pond.
Okay.
I'm trying on a pond. And if you're standing on his back porch and looked over on a hill to the right, he had a huge circle of Tumor's Corner live oak saplings that he had gotten. And each one of them was for a child or grandchild.
Wow. And
that, from the story that I gathered, there, I think, if I remember correctly, there was one in the middle that pretty much, I guess, was for him. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where they buried him, under that tree.
Oh, wow.
And I read that, and he said a flock of geese flew over right in the middle of it. And I could picture myself there during the funeral and hearing he took me to that spot. And everything that he had told Jimmy, he told me that he wanted to he wanted his body to fertilize that tree, live on through that tree. And I don't know, when I read that, you just get chills.
Oh yeah.
And get a little teary-eyed because, he's gone. But that's just how much he loved Auburn, because he wanted to be planted under Tumor's Corner oak, you know? And so, and I say it that way, he was buried under, but he wanted to fertilize that tree. But every kid and grandkid had their own Tumor's Corner live oak planted in a circle. And I'm hoping that I can get out there and just pay my respects.
Well, I would bet someday you'll get to do that. And if nothing else, my hope is that those that are hearing this and that still obviously have a connection to the Pat Dye family will make this happen, because I think you deserve that. The time you spent with him to learning, obviously, but helping him is much deserved there. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that was going to be my question. We've now all known since his passing, and we've heard of the quiet and very, humble funeral that he had out there. We've all wanted to be out there. And while you may not have been able to physically be out there for it, you put us there and you put yourself there. And that's pretty cool that we have that perspective to work from on there. So I'm glad that you can at least picture in your mind what that looks like. I think it was his sister who shared an image of it online. And that gave us obviously a shot of what you see in your mind.
Yeah.
But you did a great job of sharing your experiences with that out there. So I appreciate you sharing your relationship with Pat Dye and why it's so special. And I think it's a very important part of the Auburn culture, the Auburn family aspect of it, because yeah, it's about football. I mean, we're not going to sit here and say that, we're not all gung ho about football in the state of Alabama, especially in the Auburn family. But it's much deeper than that. He said it best. Auburn folks love Auburn. They don't just love Auburn football. So I really think that's really cool about that. So you've since moved on and been doing other things. Share with us where you're at now in your life, your career. Have you done anything else related to Auburn since then, games or anything like that?
I've been to one game, and that's sad. But
no, it means you have a life. That's what it means.
Yeah, 2 years ago, I went back to Auburn because one of those professors that meant a lot to me, the one that took me to California, really tried to just help me. He retired from Auburn, and so I told my wife, I said, we got to go up there. And so we went to his retirement party, and it's just every time you go up there, it's different. Auburn's growing, and but I enjoyed getting up that way. And I spent 3 years with Coach, and it was bittersweet leaving. I didn't really plan on leaving. And there was an opportunity that just opened up back home. And I could tell my wife kind of wanted to get back home too, because both our families are here. And the opportunity opened up, and so I took it, and we moved back. And I've tried staying. It's hard to stay in touch with somebody like that. Not being his fault. It's just you look at somebody, he's busy, and you don't want to bother him.
Yeah.
So my only, I guess, regret, it was not probably calling them more often, check in. But there's a lot of people from Andalusia that go quail hunting up there, and he would always ask about me. So that there, just made me feel good that, he's checking on me. But I got to tell one story that I think is really funny. And I was talking about how I felt like he sometimes treated me like a football player, how he treated them. There was a huge, probably one of the biggest mornings we ever had. He had a semi-truck of maples come in that had to plant. And we had to get them planted very quickly. But it was turkey season. And there was another guy that was working on the farm, and me and him went turkey hunting that morning. And the turkey was just gobbling, and we couldn't leave him. So we were supposed to be there at 7, and it was 7:30 when we pulled up. And the look that he gave us, you just knew. And I probably was chewed out worse than I've ever been chewed out. I felt pretty bad. And that whole day we worked hard till dark. And that afternoon, it was probably 8 o'clock that afternoon. Everybody had went home, and he looked at me. He said, "Get in the truck." So I got in the truck, and we went up to the torch, and we had a meal together. And he just talked to me and told me I had let him down, but the way we had worked throughout the day, kind of made up for it. But that's one memory I'll definitely, because I didn't let him. So that was in the first probably 6 months of me working for him. But he led into me pretty heavily.
You literally got coached by Coach. And I think that's awesome because, maybe it wasn't about football, but his passion was teaching people in some aspect of life. And I think that's really, that's so special because he got into you, and now see, even today it resonates with you. But the thing I think that it's not that he got into you that sticks with you, is because he loved you enough to talk to you about why he was disappointed and what he was encouraged about, the way you responded to the situation there. So that right there is, I think, what coaching's all about. It's about being truthful and sometimes hurtful a little bit, but it is about how you teach them after that and invest in them after that, and don't just cast them aside. And I think a lot of people could learn from that example like that. And I'm glad that you had that experience with them. That's really funny, though. I'm intimidated for you just thinking about it.
Yeah, like I said, it's one of those memories you'll always remember, but it's one of those lessons you need to always remember too.
Absolutely. And it sounds like you're a better person for those memories as well. So here's where I'd like to go from here. Now, you're going to have an interesting take on this, I feel, because while you are obviously a member of the Auburn family, despite your ties to the other side a little bit, some of these questions you may not have an answer for. What we're going to do is what I call not so rapid fire questions. The reason I say that is most of the people I've asked this have wanted to explain themselves and their answers for one reason or the other. So you can take your time with them. We have 12 questions to go through, and it'll be some of them pretty simple, but you might want to put some thought. But even if you don't have an answer for one, that's completely fine as well. So if you're ready to do that, I'm going to set you up with the challenge of not so rapid fire questions.
Okay.
All right. So question number 1, orange or blue?
Blue.
Any reason behind that, or just straight up blue?
It's always been my favorite color.
Okay. Hey, at least you got to the answer quickly and had a reason behind it. Question number 2, Aubie or War Eagle?
Probably War Eagle.
Okay. And you even referenced that at the beginning of your story here when we were talking about how much that resonated with you. So I'm not shocked there. The only thing now is that the minions of Aubie now have you on their list, and you will never be able to speak to him again. I'm just telling you from personal experience, you are now on Aubie's list. So there you go. Question number 3, the Auburn fight song or Glory, Glory to Old Auburn?
I like the Auburn fight song.
Question number 4, and I think we've already answered this, but I'll give you a chance to change it if you want. Your favorite Auburn athletics program, so football, basketball, all that stuff.
Football, yeah.
Number 5, your favorite Auburn athlete.
You got to go Bo Jackson.
I mean, it's hard not to, especially with your ties. Did you actually watch Bo Over the Top back in the day?
Yeah, I've watched footage of that. Yeah, I have.
Oh man, that's even I know it didn't end well for Alabama fans, but I think that's such an iconic piece of sports history is seeing that goal line stand or attempt at a goal line stand for Alabama and seeing Bo. And because if anybody else had tried to make that jump, they wouldn't have had, because Alabama played it perfectly. I mean, they had guys there meeting them at the top. And if it hadn't been for his athletic ability, it would have been over. And Alabama would have continued on for 11 more years, and we'd be a lot sadder today. Bo Jackson is your answer for that one. Question number 6. Again, I think this one's a little easy, but your favorite Auburn coach?
Yeah, Pat.
Question number 7. Your favorite Auburn non-athletics person. So this one's sometimes a little bit of a trouble for people. So this can be someone in your family, a professor, a celebrity that's not athletics related at Auburn. Is there anybody, an Auburn person outside of directly tied to the sports teams that you have in your mind?
Joe Eakes, Professor Eakes.
And is he the one that we spoke about that we went to retirement?
Yes.
And give people a little bit of context for him as well, because I know obviously he works in the horticulture side of things, but tell exactly what you learned from him and all that real quick.
He was the one that, and there's a lot of professors there that, come to mind, but he was the first one that come to me. And he's the one that asked me to join that club, which the club's the one that went to California. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what he saw in me, I guess. But not everybody got to go to the Sequoia National Forest and stay a few nights. It was mostly grad students. And I think I was the only student. And I don't know. He just, like I said, took me in. He was by far had the hardest class. It was tough. But there's something about him, and his wife cooked biscuits every Wednesday morning.
Oh wow!
For the class, so we'd always go over there and eat, and so that's the kind of memories. And he was a duck hunter, and I like to duck hunt, so we had a lot of connections.
Oh, see, you've got something here. You got him to invest in you. You got Pat Dye to invest in you. Whatever you're drinking, I want some of it, because I mean, you're just attracting people left and right over there. But I love that. I had a professor as well at Auburn that he was my toughest class at Auburn in some respects. but I still reference him as my most influential professor because not only did he invest in us, but he was a friend and a mentor at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's cool. Question number 8. Do you have a favorite Auburn building?
Funchess Hall.
Oh, I'm so glad you gave that answer. That is where, okay. So I'm just a little bit, I know I keep talking about myself here and I'm going to stop doing that, but I'm a biological science graduate as well. And I spent tons of time in Funchess Hall, or Fungus Hall, as some people like to call it. That bottom floor, that's there's some fungus down there, literally. And I'm glad to meet a fellow Funchess person here because that is, I can still smell it, and I can still, I can feel the air in there still to this day. I know that's weird. I'm getting weird about Funchess Hall, but I tie that to memories.
Changing, but that's one building they just don't need to change.
No, the day that I will park myself outside of Funchess and say, "Don't you dare touch my Fungus Hall."
Yeah, I started to do that with the barbecue place across the road.
yeah, that's you're making me painful memories here, but it's kind of fortuitous that you say that because my next question number 9, is favorite Auburn place to eat. It can be past or present.
That one was a tough one. That I'm trying to think. Yeah, I'm gonna say there.
Barbecue house is what
the barbecue house.
Yeah. I spent many mornings there before class as well, before I went into Funchess. I had to get some breakfast, so that's it. That's one that's why I get a little twinge in my heart when you talk about it, because I'm like, breakfast and go smell Funchess Hall. I'm glad we have that connection there. Question number 10. Do you have a favorite Auburn tradition? Now, this can be sports or non-sports related. Most people go to the Tiger Walk, the War Eagle Flight. Some people go to the not stepping on the seal tradition or rolling Timber's Corner. Any of those are fair game, but if there's a tradition that sticks out in your mind at Auburn, what one would that be?
I would actually say riding down College by Funchess and then turning by the President's Mansion and just going by the practice stadium. I just like to take that route because I always, when I went to class, I worked at the greenhouses, and then I would leave the greenhouses and then I'd go to work out. Mm-hmm. So that was just, I like to take my old route.
So that's cool. See, most people go with, the obvious traditions, but you just went to your own personal tradition. And that's what I want out of this series. That is that's something so simple that you just took a certain route just so you could see certain things or feel certain things. And that is reminding me of some little traditions that I had on campus or just when I go visit that I just, it doesn't make sense why I go this way, but I just need to see it. And
and I like freedom. We spend a lot of time there, so
it's beautiful. It's a beautiful artery. I also spent some time there, and it's you can get lost in it for a little bit.
Yeah.
Question number 11. Do you have a favorite Auburn related memory?
It's got not the only, but really just the memories. I went to a football game with Coach Dye.
Wow.
Now he left me and went up top, but but he got me some good seats, me and my wife, and but I rode there with him, and I don't know. Most of my fond memories of Auburn is either with him or with the professors that I work close with.
See, I'm just getting more and more jealous of you by the day now. Could you look? I know he left you to go up to his place up there in the top, but you went to a game with like the quintessential ambassador to not just Auburn, but to Auburn football. I mean, that's just mind blowing right there. Like, I'm so jealous of you right now.
And this is how confident he was, I guess. He asked us if we wanted to go to the game. I said, yeah. He said, all right. He said, I got you some tickets. Well, we get to the stadium. Outside the stadium, he makes a phone call. He said, hey, do you have any tickets? And someone brings tickets down and gives them to us. But I guess he just knew he could get tickets in one way or another.
Well, when your name is Pat Dye, I think you can do just about anything you want on campus.
That's right.
Oh, that's so funny. Question number 12, and your final question. Describe Auburn in one word.
Family.
It's fair enough. And I think it's the most obvious answer, but it is the most appropriate answer. And I think it speaks to absolutely your relationship with Pat Dye and your relationship with the university and the town now because of everything. You spoke to it even before we started talking about Pat Dye, about how you felt connected to the community of Auburn when you got there and how special it was. Despite your roots to the other side, you still built that connection. You have those memories. And now you're able to look at these times fondly and not be worried about the fickle things of the result of a football game, but you're able to appreciate the whole of the Auburn experience. So that's really cool. And I agree with your one-word definition there. So Casey, thank you so much for sitting down with me and telling me about your Auburn roots. It has been enlightening for me. I'm now jealous of you, and I feel a little bit more connected to you because we share some connections in terms of where we spent some time on campus and things like that. So thank you for sharing that with me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome. And that call is out there to you other Auburn fans that might be listening. If you want to share your Auburn roots or want to nominate someone, just like Casey has been nominated here to share their Auburn roots, you can just contact us at any way, social media, anything like that. We'd love to hear your stories as well. And that's all we have from this episode of Auburn Roots. Thank you for listening, and War Eagle.
Before you get out of here, we want to remind you of a couple things. Head over to e2cnetwork.com, our website where you can find everything that you'll ever need from us, podcasts, blogs, and even ways to help support the show. If you want to find individual episodes, you can download all of these on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play. So until we see you again, I want to remind you of one thing, that here at the network, we believe in Auburn and love it. The only question remains, do you?